Some stories don't leave when the credits roll. They linger, not just in your memory, but in your bones. Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of those stories. As a novelist, I've spent my life dissecting character arcs, weaving themes and crafting emotional payoffs. But every once in a while, I come across a story that I wish I had written. This is one of them. This is the story of Arthur Morgan, a man built for a world that no longer exists. A story about loyalty, disillusionment, death, and the quiet courage it takes to change even when it's too late. It is, at its core, a tragedy. And like all great tragedies, it tells us something about ourselves. So today we're going to break down Red Dead Redemption 2, not as a game, but as literature. Because this story deserves more than praise, it deserves analysis. This game begins not with a bang, but with a blizzard. Snow blankets the world, food is scarce, morale is low, the gang isn't thriving, they're clinging to life. And in that frozen silence, Rockstar is making a statement. This isn't the romantic West, this is the death of the West. And Arthur Morgan is a relic of it. The snow isolates not just the characters, but the player. You feel trapped. You feel cold. It's a physical metaphor for an emotional distance that characters have from the lives they once imagined. It's not just the atmosphere, it's the tone of the entire story. This opening is brilliant because it doesn't just present a physical struggle. It prevents an emotional one. Dutch is barking orders, but there's a hollowness to his confidence. You can already sense the disconnection between what he says and what he does. Hosea is quieter now. And Arthur, he's not thinking for himself yet. He's executing, surviving. That's all he knows. And that's the tragedy. The idea that Arthur is a man whose emotional development has been stunted by loyalty. He doesn't question. He doesn't reflect. He acts. Because for his entire life, the gang has been his world. The mission to find John in the storm. Let's pause there. Because it's just not an early game task. It's a metaphor. John is alone, wounded, hidden in the snow. Arthur finds him, carries him back. It sets up an eventual arc. That Arthur will in many ways save John again. But this time, not just from the cold, but from repeating his own mistakes. And think about the silence in these missions, the lack of music, the howling wind. It feels more like a horror game than an action western. That's intentional. Rockstar is telling us this isn't a story about power. It's a story about loss. The loss of freedom, the loss of innocence, the loss of the world Dutch thinks he can still reclaim. As a writer, I admire this kind of opening deeply. It's understated, controlled. Every line of the dialogue is tight. Every environmental detail reinforces the central truth. Things are falling apart, and no one is ready to admit it. Arthur is a ghost already. The snow is his purgatory. Dutch Vanderlei is the perfect example of a charismatic ideologue. And like all tragic leaders, his greatest flaw is that he believes his own lies. Early on, Dutch is magnetic. The campfire speeches, the way he reassures the women, the way he touches the shoulder of a wounded man and says we're family, it feels real. Even Arthur believes it. But slowly, painfully, those words lose weight. After the Valentine bank heist, Dutch begins to change, or rather, we begin to see that he never had a solid plan. It was improvisation. Ego dressed up like philosophy. And what makes it tragic is that Dutch wants to believe he's righteous. That he's more than just another outlaw with a gun. Let's talk about Shady Belle. That abandoned plantation house is symbolic. A rotting mansion once built on illusion and power. Dutch moves the gang in like it's a new beginning. But it's haunted. Dark. Claustrophobic. Just like Dutch's mind is becoming. He says they'll be safe there. That it's a step towards freedom. But it's not. It's another prison, another lie, and Arthur starts to notice. We start to notice. Dutch's reaction to stress becomes more violent, more erratic. When he murders Angelo Bronte by feeding him to an alligator, Arthur doesn't cheer. He recoils. That's the turning point. A man who once claimed to stand for liberty is now feeding corpses to the swamp. And then there's Micah. Micah isn't just a snake. He's a mirror. He represents everything Dutch pretends he isn't. Cruel, self-serving, and violent for the sake of it. But Dutch keeps him close, because Micah doesn't question him, and Arthur sees that too. There's a look Arthur gives Dutch after the San Denis disaster. Dutch says, "Have some goddamn faith." And Arthur doesn't even respond. He just stares at him. That silence is powerful, because it's the moment Arthur starts thinking like a man, not just a follower. "You keep saying that," Arthur tells Dutch later. It's one of the most heartbreaking lines in the game, because by then, Dutch's words are ash. All he has left is control, and Arthur is done giving it to him. As a storyteller, this slow unraveling is what makes Dutch such a compelling figure. He's not just a failed leader. He's a man who once inspired, and who now clings to a myth no one believes in, not even himself. And for Arthur, realizing that the man he trusted most was hollow, that's the beginning of freedom. That's the beginning of pain. Arthur's story changes forever with a cough. It's quiet, off-screen, and easy to miss, but it signals the beginning of the end. He doesn't get shot in a duel. He doesn't fall in battle. He contracts tuberculosis, a disease that kills slowly, quietly, and with great indifference. And that matters, because tuberculosis isn't just an illness in this story, it's a symbol. It's the past catching up to him, the price of violence, the curse of a life spent breaking others. We learn later that Arthur likely contracted it when he beat a poor farmer during a debt collection. It was a moment that, at the time, felt routine, unimportant. But death doesn't care about importance. Death comes anyway. And for the first time in his life, Arthur Morgan is forced to face it. This changes everything. The world doesn't shift. He does. His dialogue gets quieter. His journals get deeper. He stops and watches birds. He smiles at children. He grows increasingly protective of people he once only saw as pieces in Dutch's puzzle. There's a moment when he's writing with Charles, and he says, "I guess I'm afraid." That broke me a little, because Arthur Morgan, the enforcer, the outlaw, the hardened gun, admits fear. And not the fear of pain, the fear of wasting his life. And that's where this story becomes more than great. It becomes human. He starts helping people he used to ignore. There's a veteran who asks him to visit his horse one last time, the widow he teaches to hunt, the nun at the train station who speaks to him like he's worth saving. These aren't side missions, they're confessions. Each one is a step toward grace. And grace doesn't mean survival, it means understanding. Arthur can't escape what he's done, but he can choose what he becomes. And that's the brilliance of the story. It doesn't offer redemption as a reward. It offers it as a choice. A slow, painful, earned choice. There's a moment late in the game when Arthur sits alone at camp. You can just watch him, silent, reflective, slowly playing his harmonica and writing in his journal. There's no dialogue. There's no mission prompt. Just a man waiting to die. In that silence, Rockstar does what many writers fail to do. They trust the player or reader to feel the weight. This section of the game is meditative, almost spiritual in a sense. It's less about action and more about the internal shift of the man trying, finally, to live right. Not to save himself, but to give someone else a chance. That someone is John Marston. There's a scene in Red Dead Redemption 2, if you're playing with high honor, where Arthur tells John, "You gotta go, and don't look back." That line defines the entire arc of Arthur Morgan. He knows he's dying. He knows the gang is lost. But he believes John still has a shot. And that belief is the most selfless thing Arthur ever gives. This redemption isn't flashy. It doesn't come in a blaze of glory. It comes in letting go. Letting go of Dutch. Letting go of the gang. Letting go of the illusion that he was ever on the right side of anything. And that takes more courage than any gunfight. Arthur doesn't redeem himself by saving the world. He redeems himself by saving one man. A man who will become a father, a husband. A man who, in his own flawed way, will try. This redemption isn't cinematic, it's quiet. It's riding back to camp knowing you've just helped someone for no gain. It's choosing not to kill when you easily could. It's telling the truth even when it won't be heard. And depending on your choices, Arthur gets to die on his own terms. Not in victory, but in peace. He doesn't beg. He doesn't run. He looks out over the mountains and sees the sunrise. That sunrise isn't just scenery, it's a metaphor. It's what comes after him. What comes next. "I gave you all I had," it says. And he did. That's not a line, that's his eulogy. As an author, I can't overstate how rare it is to see a character arc so complete, so quietly devastating. Arthur's end is not triumphant, but it's true. And sometimes, that's more important. That's more impactful. He started as a gun, he died a man, and we felt every step of the journey. Arthur Morgan's story ends, but its influence doesn't. When we step into the shoes of John Marston, it's not just a mechanical shift, it's a thematic inheritance. We're not starting a new story, we're living out Arthur's final wish. John is not a perfect man. We already know how his story ends from the original Red Dead Redemption. But what's so powerful about this epilogue is that we see John trying to be better, trying to be the man Arthur believed he could be. And it's not easy. He builds a ranch. He proposes to his girlfriend Abigail. He tries to raise Jack in peace. But the past is never far behind. Every fence John hammers into place is weighted with the memory of Arthur's sacrifice. The epilogue missions feel different, on purpose. They're slower, quieter, domestic. Instead of robbing trains, you're delivering mail. Instead of shooting Pinkertons, you're chasing chickens. And that tonal shift is essential, because it reinforces the idea that legacy is not about repetition. It's about transformation. Arthur didn't want John to take his place. He wanted him to escape it. And John tries. He fumbles through it, uncertain, stubborn, prideful. But we see something new in him. Patience, gratitude, a desire for permanence. And then there's Micah. Micah is the past. He is everything vile and unresolved. And when John goes after him, it's not just revenge, it's ritual. It's closing the door Arthur never could. The mountain showdown in the snow mirrors Arthur's final moments. But this time, the sun rises after the violence. John walks away, and with him, we feel Arthur's presence. Dutch, silent, walks off into the snow, alone. No speech, no excuses, just a man swallowed by the consequences of his ego. It's honestly the perfect symmetry. Arthur died, trying to make space for a better future. John tries to live in it, and that struggle, to become more than the sum of your mistakes, is the true inheritance of Arthur Morgan. Let's talk about what Red Dead Redemption 2 really dismantles. The myth of the cowboy. The Western genre has always been about rugged men, lone wolves, stoic faces, and fast hands. Violence justified by freedom. But Arthur Morgan defies all of that. He cries. He journals. He sings. He talks about fear. And he seeks forgiveness. Not from God, not from others, but from himself. He's not invincible. He isn't proud. He isn't even sure who he is by the end of it. That's revolutionary. Because it shows us a kind of masculinity that feels, a kind that reflects, a kind that lets go. When Arthur plays with Jack and speaks gently to Mary Beth, it's not weakness, it's strength. The strength to be soft, to care. Even the way Arthur treats his horse is revealing. The bond system isn't just a mechanic, it's emotional shorthand. Arthur talks to his horse like a friend, pets it, thanks it, and when it dies in the final ride, the game pauses to let you say goodbye. That moment broke thousands of players, and it's not because the horse is special, it's because Arthur is. He doesn't just live in the world, he feels it, and in doing so, he gives us a new model of masculinity, one that allows room for grief, guilt, and grace. In most stories, the world is just a backdrop, a setting, but in Red Dead Redemption 2, the world is a character in its own right. This isn't just an open world map, it's a living, breathing presence, one that changes with the seasons. One that reflects Arthur's own decline. As he weakens, the world doesn't soften. It becomes more vivid, more beautiful, more alive. That's no accident. You can feel it in the rainstorm that hits during the San Denis chapters. Thick, gray, oppressive. You can feel it in the golden hour light that bathes the heartlands when Arthur starts to reflect more deeply. The world is speaking in mood, in texture, in silence. Truly listen to the sound of the woods when Arthur goes on a quiet hunting trip with Charles. It's peaceful, meditative, but there's a tension beneath it, a knowing. Like the earth itself knows Arthur is running out of time. The camp locations matter too. Horseshoe Overlook is lush, full of potential. Shady Bell is crumbling. Warma is surreal and chaotic. Each shift in setting mirrors the game's psychological state. As their unity collapses, so does their place in the world. And then there's the small stuff. The way Arthur reaches out to pat his horse without prompt. The way he stops to admire a view. The way you, the player, are encouraged, invited, to slow down. This game doesn't want you to rush. It wants you to live in its world. To notice that Arthur notices. To see the deer grazing at dawn. The fog on the river. The silhouette of the gallows and Valentine at dusk. That's not just atmosphere, that's storytelling. The world of Red Dead Redemption 2 doesn't just support the narrative, it amplifies it. It reminds us what's at stake, what's worth fighting for, what's worth leaving behind. And in the end, when Arthur dies, the world goes on. Indifferent, eternal. But there's something in it that feels different now, because we saw it through his eyes. And that view, it changed us. We've talked about visuals, about character, about the world. But now let's talk about something even more subtle. Something that seeps into your bones without you even noticing. Sound. Red Dead Redemption 2 uses sound design and music not just as a background, but as emotional architecture. Let's start with the silence. The game is unafraid to let the player sit in quiet. There are long rides where nothing happens, no dialogue, no music, just the clop of hooves, the rustle of wind through trees, the distant call of the hawk. That silence is sacred. It gives space for thought, for the player to feel what Arthur is feeling. And when the music does enter, it enters like a whisper. Take the moment when Arthur rides back to camp after his diagnosis. D'Angelo's Unshaken begins to play. It's not triumphant, it's meditative. The lyrics are haunting. May I stand unshaken amid a crashing world. It's not just a song, it's Arthur's soul laid bare. And this happens more than once. When you ride through the swamp after leaving Guarma, That's the Way It Is plays over the landscape as Arthur contemplates life, death, and everything in between. It's reflective, mournful, but also hopeful. The music speaks for him when he has no more words. Rockstar uses music to punctuate emotion, not override it. It's not there to tell you how to feel, it's there to echo what's already in your heart. Even the ambient soundscape, the buzzing insects in Lemoyne, the thunder over the plains, the howling wind through the trees at night, it's immersive, but it's also psychological. It roots you to Arthur's perspective. There's one moment near the end, right before Arthur's final stand, where the sound design shifts. The wind dies. The air feels still, and all you hear is his breath, strained, labored, close to breaking. And then, silence. That's not just audio design, that's narrative restraint. That's storytelling with headphones. As a writer, I'm constantly reminded that not everything has to be said. That sound, or the absence of it, can be the loudest voice in the room. And in this game, the sound of redemption isn't a roar. It's a whisper, a guitar, a gust of wind. And in the end, maybe that's all it needs to be. There's one more layer to Arthur Morgan's story that we haven't fully explored. That's you, the player. This isn't just a scripted narrative, it's a reactive one. Arthur's journey is deeply affected by how you, the player, choose to live it. That's rare in storytelling. And in Red Dead Redemption 2, it's handled with startling nuance. Your decisions shape Arthur's honor level. But it's not just a mechanic, it's a moral compass. It influences dialogue, animations, interactions, and ultimately, how he dies. When he helps someone on the road, he tips his hat. When he kills in cold blood, his expressions change. When he shows kindness, people remember. When he doesn't, they recoil. And this layering, this dance between authorial intent and player agency, creates something unique. A story that feels co-written. You're not just watching his decline, you're participating in it. Do you take the time to visit the widow? Do you spare the rival gang member? Do you take the high road, even when it's easier not to? Those choices accumulate, quietly, and by the end, you're not just facing Arthur's morality, you're facing yours. You realize you've been writing your own epitaph all along. If you play honorably, the camera lingers on Arthur's face as he watches the sunrise, a peaceful look softening his final breath. But if you played selfishly, he dies in the mud, gasping under Michael's blade. Both are valid, both are powerful, but only one feels like release. This is one of the few games that dare to ask not what will happen to your character, but who will they be when it does. It's an invitation, not to save the world, but to save one man from himself. And that makes the player, the you, at the center of all this. A character too. A silent ghost standing behind Arthur Morgan, nudging him toward redemption or ruin. That is extraordinary design, and even more extraordinary storytelling. Because in the end, Arthur Morgan isn't a man who changed the world, but because of your choices, he might just change you. So where does that leave us? After all the rides, all the gunfights, all the whispered moments between Arthur and the people he finally learned to love, what are we left with? A grave. A simple patch of earth on a quiet hill. A place most players will ride past again and again, long after the credits roll. But that grave says everything. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. It doesn't say he found it. It says he longed for it. And sometimes that's the most we can ask of a person. Arthur Morgan doesn't become a legend. He doesn't get songs written about him. His name fades with the dust of the dying West. But he mattered. To John, to Abigail, to Jack, and to us. That's what great stories do. They remind us that meaning isn't in the outcome. It's in the striving, the struggle, the trying. As a writer, Red Dead Redemption 2 reminds me what fiction is capable of. It shows us that character isn't a set of stats or plot points. It's a soul in motion. Arthur Morgan begins his story as a weapon, but he ends it as a man. And in this transformation, he teaches us something precise. That no matter how far you are, no matter what you've done, you can always choose to try. Not for redemption, not for glory, just to be better. I am Devin Anderson, better known on Twitch as Author Cypher. If this story moved you, the way it moved me, let me know in the comments. Let's talk about what made it matter. What made it linger? What made it true? Because stories like this, they don't come around often. And when they do, they deserve to be remembered. Thanks for watching.